Good morning. My name is Robin Carter, and on behalf of the Board of Trustees of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spartanburg this year, thank you for joining us. As the pandemic escalates, the UUCS Board continues to carefully consider how to maintain our physical safety while also providing for the connection and emotional well-being of our congregation. We must keep one another safe, and we must cultivate our connection with one another. Please continue to practice public health protocols, wearing masks, social distancing, limiting group size, being outside whenever possible, and hand washing. Small groups, such as covenant groups and committees, are encouraged to gather in person outside at homes or on church grounds, practicing all of our safety protocols. We will continue to plan one-off events on the church grounds utilizing carefully planned safety measures for all of our participants. Today is a big social justice day for our congregation, and there are 3 ways that you can engage in this important work. First, we are celebrating our 3rd annual Teddy Bear Sunday today. Our gifts of bears and other stuffed animals will be given to the Children's Advocacy Center and the City of Spartanburg Public Safety to be given to children who have to be removed from their living situations. Our second congregational dialogue on becoming an anti-racist, anti-oppression, multicultural congregation will take place over Zoom after this service from 12:15 to 1:45 today. Join us even if you couldn't attend last time. See the happenings for the Zoom info. And third, the social justice quintuple dip will take place in the church parking lot today from 2:30 to 4:30 p.m. This is a special holiday event to donate teddy bears and other stuffed animals, children's books, new or gently used, food and toiletries, newspaper for the Humane Society, and to pick up a new face mask for yourself, or to have a chance to buy mural note cards. The beautiful poinsettias in the sanctuary this morning were donated by Don and Mary Miles in honor of Ed Wild, who provided the church with poinsettias every December when he was well enough to do so. Thank you to Don and Mary and Ed for this gift and this legacy. A beautiful Christmas tree was donated to the church by Marika Tam. Through a cooperative effort by the worship team, the aesthetics team, and the Buildings and Grounds Committee, the tree has been placed in the backyard. We are asking our church family to decorate the tree with natural ornaments. Stacy Jackson will be posting decorating ideas on the church Facebook page. The RE committee has encouraged the children to create their own ornaments, and we ask that you take pictures as you hang your decorations on the tree and share it on our Facebook page. Please don't place edible decorations on the tree, though. We want to keep the squirrels out of the celebration. Those instead can be hung along the fence beside Hatcher House. This is something that we can all share, decorate, and admire this holiday season. And last but not least, the next Path to Membership class will take place on Sunday, January 10th at 12:30 p.m. Are you considering joining the congregation of UUCS? The Path to Membership class is the place to learn more about Unitarian Universalism and our congregation. Please register by sending an email to membership@uucs.org. Especially in times like these, we need each other, and the world needs your gifts, your abilities, your faith, and your love. Thank you for being a part of our congregation today.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being a part of our congregation this morning, for joining us as we begin the winter holidays and the winter celebrations that stretch out before us over the next month. Thank you for being a part of the work and worship of this church. I want to offer a special thanks to the AV team. They have been doing miracle work since March when the pandemic began, not to mention all that they've done over the years prior and what they had done to set us up, to position us in order to do this live stream broadcast every Sunday during the pandemic so that we can stay connected. But in the last few weeks, that team has wrestled with all kinds of technical and internet connectivity problems. Even this weekend, teams were working on ways to boost our internet connection. And this morning, rechecking cables and making sure that those connections are secure. We owe this team a great debt of thanks. And we need to acknowledge their persistence and their endurance in what is exhausting work. To constantly do this week after week, only to have systems far beyond our control and eccentricities within that system disrupt the hard work that they have put in. In many ways, that's a metaphor for what we're all feeling. We have worked so hard for so many months to help one another, to carry each other, to keep one another safe, to be with one another even across distance through this pandemic. And now to be in yet another surge that is breaking all records every day. It is exhausting. It is wearying to work so hard, only to have systems and disruptions in those systems far beyond our control continue to set us back, continue to ask everything of us. And then at that moment to enter into the winter holidays. How are we to celebrate during a time like this? All month, that is what we will think about together. What it means to celebrate these holidays, all of these holidays that are so meaningful to us, during this most difficult time, when we have lost so much and when we have so much to grieve. What does it mean to celebrate? We will do this work with care and with connection and with lament with grief, and also with joy together through this winter passage. Robin's already shared with us about all that's happening with social justice in our congregation today. And I want to just highlight the remarkable work that's happening and that you can become involved in it. We want you to. Today is Teddy Bear Sunday, our third annual Sunday, when we have an offering of stuffed animals, of teddy bears, that will be given to the Children's Advocacy Center and the City of Spartanburg's Public Safety to be given to children when the circumstances of that child's life require them to be removed from their home because of abuse, because of violence. That officer, that social worker, that person who is there to help them can give them a small measure of comfort in a stuffed animal. We celebrate that this morning. And then right after the service, we're going to have a social justice dialogue. And if you haven't joined in these dialogues before, I want to invite you to come. And if you're worried a little bit about the work of consciousness, about anti-racism work, about why we're so insistent about this and why we're pursuing this with such vigor, I really want to invite you to come to see what this work is about and to see how transformative it can be. To try to transform systems of violence and oppression with love beyond belief takes acts of care informed by a consciousness of care. And Teddy Bear Sunday and a dialogue, as different as they are, they go powerfully together. And then this afternoon, and again on Tuesday morning, we have our social justice quintuple dip, when you can bring gifts, including teddy bears and canned goods and children's books and newspapers for pets, all these ways that we can give in this time of stress and duress, this time of pandemic, to serve our community, to serve our neighbors, to help each other. I want to invite you to engage in all of these ways so that in our grief and lament, we act with power. When the systems disrupt our lives again and again and again, and we're exhausted, still together we find the resources to do something different. We can do this work. And our small gifts, just a teddy bear, just our presence in a dialogue, these things can change the world that we're living in. We see it every time we do them. And so we choose to do them again. Now, many of you know that we have been doing a truly unreasonable and implausible thing this winter. This November and this December, we are having a special fundraising campaign, a short end-of-year campaign to raise funds for an elevator that will connect our newly renovated Wild Hall and the kitchen that has been built there with the main foyer and upstairs area of our sanctuary, the body of our church. To build this elevator will create access for young children and families, for people who have food and hardware and supplies to move up and down flights of stairs, and to help folks who have issues with mobility, to help all of us, both in this congregation and in our community, move back and forth through our space, to utilize it to its fullness, to do all of these things that enhance our lives. And now in the pandemic is a wonderful chance for us to try to advance that elevator. I want to tell you how this campaign began. With one gift. Months ago, before this fundraiser was even conceived, before the group of church leaders gathered to imagine that this might be a time to pursue this campaign, before all of that, a single gift came to our church. And I want to tell you how much this gift was, because it's a remarkable gift. It's an incredible amount of money. To see all that has followed from it, I want for you to hear about this gift that launched all of this campaign. that we've now undertaken. One morning, last winter, months before we even knew there would be a pandemic, a little girl in this congregation walked up to her parent, and she handed that parent an envelope, a sealed envelope, on which she had written in her elementary school handwriting, "Elevator." And she said, "This is a gift so we can build an elevator." And in that envelope was 1 penny, and a second penny, and a dime, 10 more pennies, and another dime, 10 more pennies. 22 pennies in that envelope. Can 22 cents build an elevator? Of course, the answer is no. 22 cents can't build an elevator. But since that gift, tens of thousands of dollars, by the pennies and by the ones and by the tens and the hundreds and the thousands and even the 10,000s, gifts of all sizes from many different hands have been extended to this congregation so that we can build an elevator that will change the heart of our congregation and open use of our facility to every person. 22 cents from the hand of a little girl in this congregation. We do this work together. None of us can do it alone, but all of us, when we join together, can do things that turn back the tide of despair and separation and brokenness that we feel could overwhelm us. Whether it's 1 penny or many, I want to ask you to give, not in a way that is too much, not in a way that will hurt you or your family and your finances. The smallest gift can carry us the whole distance. Please join in this remarkable, implausible, amazing work that we can only do together, and that we can do when we do it together. That's the kind of congregation that we are. Small, implausible, changing everything. Welcome.
To light our chalice. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered this speech in support of striking sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee, at Mason Temple on April 3, 1968. He was assassinated the next day. If I were standing at the beginning of time, with the possibility of general and panoramic view of the whole of human history up to now, and the Almighty said to me, "Martin Luther King, which age would you like to live in?" I would take my mental flight by Egypt, through, or rather across the Red Sea, through the wilderness on toward the Promised Land. And in spite of its magnificence, I wouldn't stop there. I would move on by Greece and take my mind to Mount Olympus, and I would see Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Euripides, and Aristophanes assembled around the Parthenon as they discussed the great and eternal issues of reality. But I wouldn't stop there. I would go on even to the great heyday of the Roman Empire, and I would see developments around there through various emperors and leaders. But I wouldn't stop there. I would even come up to the day of Renaissance and get a quick picture of all that the Renaissance did for cultural and aesthetic life of humanity. But I wouldn't stop there. I would even go by the way that the man for whom I'm named had his habitat. And I would watch Martin Luther as he tacked his 95 Theses on the door of the church in Wittenberg. But I wouldn't stop there. I would come on up even to 1863 and watch a vacillating president by the name of Abraham Lincoln finally come to the conclusion that he had to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. But I wouldn't stop there. I would even come up to the early 30s and see a man grappling with the problems of bankruptcy of his nation and come up with an eloquent cry that we have nothing to fear but fear itself. But I wouldn't stop there. Strangely enough, I would turn to the Almighty and say, if you allow me to live just a few years in the second half of the 20th century, I will be happy. Now that's a strange statement to make because the world is all messed up. The nation is sick. Trouble is in the land. Confusion all around. That's a strange statement. But I know somehow that only when it is dark enough can you see the stars.
I could skate away on.
So sometimes we wonder how to move forward in this world, possibly more so this holiday season. Our congregation created a covenant to express how we want to be in relationship with each other and with the greater world. Please join me now as we say our covenant together. We are a people of faith and hope. Together we covenant to strive to become our better selves, to honor both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to respond to systems of violence and oppression with the power of a love beyond belief. If we were gathered together here in person, we would now have the opportunity to come forward and place a stone or shell in our rippling water bowl to represent a joy or a sorrow. Joys shared can grow, and sorrows shared are less heavy. Let's have a moment of silence at this time to offer up our concerns and happinesses, and also to hold our community close in our hearts. Our congregation is pretty amazing. Here is this topsy-turvy year with lots of difficulties, and yet we have continued to put love and energy into our church and into our greater community. We've landscaped our church property with native plants, created a shiny new kitchen for future gatherings. We've had our drive-through social justice drop-offs. We've hosted the Grimke mural on our building. We've worked very hard for voting justice. We've made thousands of masks and more. And we've given lots of money to an offering for Latinx immigrants who are left out of COVID aid. And that inspired other organizations in our community to join with us to work with that same community of folks. I think we're pretty amazing. So, as we've mentioned before, today we are celebrating Teddy Bear Sunday. You may have enjoyed seeing some of the little early arrivals here in the sanctuary. Teddy Bear Sunday started 3 years ago with a very generous donation of a multitude of teddy bears from Mike and Penny Hatchell, who are members of our church. So where on earth did Mike and Penny get so many bears from? Scott beautifully told the story in 2018, and he put a listening link into this week's happenings. Here is a super truncated version for those of you who haven't had a chance to listen to that. And if you want a really lovely story, I do recommend listening in. Well, once upon a time, Louise Owens was born in the mill village of Joanna, South Carolina. She was the oldest of 6 children. Her parents died at the ages of 30 and 32. Louise, as the oldest of the orphans, helped to bring her siblings up while living on her grandparents' farm during the Great Depression. Louise met Durwood Hatchell, otherwise known as Hatch, July 1940, and was later married to him. After World War II, she and Hatch worked for Wofford College for over 40 years. Mike is their son. One family gathering, Mike gave the gift of a teddy bear to a child in the family, and Louise commented that she had never had a teddy bear growing up. Mike and Penny began a tradition of gifting Louise with a teddy bear at Christmas and other holiday times through her 96th birthday. Louise loved having the teddy bears. When Louise died, there were a lot of very lonely teddy bears, and rather than have them go unappreciated, Mike, Penny, our minister Scott, and Sybil, our director of religious education, came up with a fitting solution. Mike and Penny gave these bears to the church in December and invited the congregation to add to the menagerie so we could support organizations who work with children in difficult times. And we're continuing in this generosity today by inviting you to bring a teddy bear or other stuffed animal to our social justice drive-through this afternoon, 3:30 to 4:30. Because of COVID, this particular year, we're asking just for new comfort critters. And also there's that time on Tuesday if you can't come this afternoon, and the Tuesday time's 10 in the morning to 12. If you have already brought your stuffed bear, stuffed octopus, or stuffed bunny to Hatcher House, thank you very much. Sybil has worked her magic, and Scott already mentioned that this year's teddy bears will be delivered to the Spartanburg Police Department and the Child Advocacy Center for Children who are undergoing difficulty and upheaval in their lives. And if by chance they can't accept animals right at this time due to COVID, our teddy bears and their companions will be hibernated and quarantined until the agency can take them and give them to children. Please join us to help our Spartanburg kids have something comforting to hold on to when their worlds are literally falling apart. To find other ways to share your talents and treasure, you can push the help button on the UUCS webpage, and there are lists of ways to serve and ways to give financially. It takes all of us and all our generosity to assure that UUCS can continue to be an example of love beyond belief in Spartanburg and beyond.
Last month, we spent the month reflecting on the beloved community, the concept and the practice of building a community of equity and freedom where every person belongs just as they are. That idea was especially promoted by leaders in the civil rights movement, and particularly by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This month, we are thinking about the winter celebrations during this time of grief that we are all living. How can we celebrate? And we make that transition, holding to the concept of beloved community, moving into a reflection of how to live in a time of lament and grief, by hearing further the words of Dr. King. I want to continue the reading that Ruth has offered us from the night before Dr. King was assassinated, April 3rd, 1968. That context is important. He knew that he was under threat. He knew that he was living in a time of pain and grief and disruption and possibility. At the end of the service, we will hear a reading from his final Christmas sermon 4 months before. So I want to ask you, as you listen to these words, to think about this man and this movement, the times of turmoil in which they were living, and what he shared, what his perspective was, the choice he made about how to position himself during that time of grief, during that time of danger and threat, during that time of possibility when he was striving for the impossible. but I know somehow that only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. Something is happening in our world. Another reason that I'm happy to live in this period is that we have been forced to a point where we're going to have to grapple with the problems that people have been trying to grapple with through history. But the demand didn't force them to do it. Survival demands that we grapple with them. That is where we are today. Now I'm just happy to live in this period, to see what is unfolding. And I'm happy to be in Memphis. Let me remind you that Dr. King was killed in Memphis the next day. Listen to his words again. That is where we are today. Now I'm just happy to live in this period, to see what is unfolding. And I'm happy to be in Memphis. Let us join together in silence. A lost year. Last night, long after my family had all gone to bed, I stepped outside. I don't know if you have noticed, but we have had truly beautiful winter nights these last few weeks. Brilliant moons that required no artificial light to see, to walk, even through woods. Bright winter stars. I stepped outside, underdressed for the coldness in the air, feeling that winter bite, that chill, feeling it awaken me after being quiet inside in the dark in my warm house. And I looked up to see the constellations, the hunter running across the sky, Canis Major and Canis Minor, the dogs, the big bear and the little bear, And I remembered that just a year ago in this congregation, we spent a whole month celebrating the stars and the beauty of the winter night. On this very Sunday, Teddy Bear Sunday, celebrating the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper constellations, the Big Bear and the Little Bear, and how they give us the North Star, Polaris, a way to be guided through the night. What a difference this year has made. What a change in our lives, the lives in which we're living. I stood, not warmly enough dressed, feeling the tightness of the cold against my skin, seeing my breath curl into the air, looking at the beauty of those stars, and feeling how much heavier the darkness is. This is a hard year. I received a message a few weeks ago from a colleague, an activist who lives in another part of the country, who's very quiet, very understated, but whose work absolutely touches us all. Were I to name what this person does and all of the things that they're involved in organizing and in fundraising, in catalyzing and activating people, you would know in your life the things that they have done that have impacted you this year. I would say much for the good. They are enormously effective. Someone very close to us and very far away at the same time. And this person, for all of their effectiveness and the breadth of their reach, the real power of what they do, power for good, wrote to me in their message, it feels like this is a lost year. And if that person, with the real impacts you can read in headlines, in major news publications around the world, and certainly in our country, if that person feels that this is a lost year, how much more the rest of us? It's heavy. It's a heavy year. I was in the grocery store yesterday, and I saw an acquaintance I hadn't seen for months. And there we were in the checkout line, standing far apart, both wearing masks, talking with each other. And I listened to this acquaintance talk about how the pandemic has decimated their work, that they had held on through the summer with the promise from the groups that they work with that things would revive in the fall. And in the fall, they were postponed until the winter. And now they're kicked all the way to next summer. And this person who has worked for years to build their business is watching it fall apart right in front of them, striving, trying to create something new, but feeling the tide rise against them. And while they shared with me about their business in an almost offhand way, without displaying any overt emotion, they said, peripherally, and one of my best friends died of COVID last week. Lost business, lost friend, so numb to the reality that it's just a statement, hardly an expression of lament. And if that's one person's experience in one checkout line, in one grocery store, in one small city in the South, just in Spartanburg, how much more the rest of us? All that we have lost. Jobs and friends and family members and confidence and just a sense of bearing in the world. It's overwhelming. Is this a lost year? You know that I am an eternal optimist. It aggravates my family that I find the positive in so many things. And I do. I see so much good around us, all the good our congregation does. Ruth has named it, and I've told stories about it. We're doing it again today, Teddy Bear Sunday, consciousness dialogue on becoming an anti-racist congregation, and then not just a social justice drop-off, and not just a social justice double dip or triple dip, but a quintuple dip that's actually a sextuple dip if you bring your teddy bear. There's no end to the good that we are doing. We are taking every advantage of this crisis to turn it into an opportunity, not for our own benefit, although we certainly are benefiting because of the boost of energy and engagement and meaning, but just to help, just to be of service. Over and over again, we are finding these ways. And in that way, this is a year of growth and expansion, of doing good in crisis. But I think to only speak of the good is not to tell the truth. And we've got enough lack of truth telling. We've got enough falsehood and lying all around us. We don't need more. Is this a lost year? I think the true answer is no and yes. It's both things. A year of opportunity and crisis. A year of hope and grief. A night of heavy darkness and piercing stars. And our challenge, I think, is to tell that truth, to feel the fullness of that, the grief and the hope together, not to allow them to negate each other, to cancel each other out, but to expand ourselves, to feel the full range of emotion of which we are capable, and to go into that darkness, guided by the light of those stars, to find a truer path for us all. And so we enter into the winter holidays. These times that are meant to be times of joy, to celebrate the end of the new year, the bounty of the year, times of abundance and gratitude and of sharing and of gift giving. And that shine just feels superficial. It feels too forced. And we know from our own lives and the lives of those that we love that already many of us feel grief during this time. We can think of people that we love who we've lost during this season and how that adds a weight to these holidays, even in the best of years. How much more now? The opportunity for us with these holidays is not to act like things are all okay, because they're not. And not to act like everything's just gonna be okay. It's not. The work of transformation is hard and ongoing, and we have a long way to go. It's to see the deeper meaning of these holidays, to try to grasp what they're telling us, what they're asking of us, what they offer to us as gifts. Because the winter holidays, each in their own telling, each in their own story, are celebrations of moving through darkness, of moving through pain, of moving through grief, not naively, but with wisdom, with gravity, with truth-telling, with reality that can discover in that reality wonder. Those holidays begin this week. On December 8th, Buddhists around the world will celebrate Bodhi Day, a day that traditionally commemorates the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama's enlightenment. It's not just a celebration of a great man, and it's not just a celebration of a religious tradition. The enlightenment of the Buddha, told at this time of year, is the story of a man who faced into the suffering of the world, who saw suffering as the fundamental reality of our lives. And by turning to face that suffering instead of fleeing it, could find wisdom, a wisdom that engenders compassion for all beings. Buddhism is a spiritual practice that is based in grief, in the world not being what we want it to be, and having to do the hard work to turn around and face that reality rather than constantly try to escape it, rather than anesthetize ourselves with gluttony and addiction and materialism and evasion, to turn with discipline to see what the world is. And when we do, to awaken paradox. The paradox that when we see the world suffering for what it is, we find within ourselves the power to relieve that suffering. Out of grief, real grief, felt grief, a deep and grounded joy, a compassion that can heal the world. Next week we celebrate Hanukkah, the story of the Jewish people emerging from the aftermath of civil war. You think about the conflict we've had in our own country this year. Amplify that with so much more violence, so much more strife, and global imperial powers bearing down on the small people trying to find each other, trying to find themselves. And in the aftermath of that, trying to reclaim their religious practice, the rededication of their temple after it had been desecrated by the Greek Empire. And within that, a miracle of energy. Where there was not fuel enough for fire, not enough energy to sustain the rededication of their spiritual life together, yet somehow it happened. In the darkness, a light that burns beyond what is possible. Solstice, passage through darkness that asks of us this year more than symbolism, but a real journey that we are living now. How do we do that truly, authentically, so that we do this not only in myth, but in our lives? Christmas, the story of a small, obscure family and a little baby who overturned the Roman Empire, systems of violence and oppression with a love that is absolutely beyond belief. Kwanzaa, the collective story of a people who join together through the virtues of unity and sharing and justice and truth-telling to celebrate their endurance through hundreds of years of oppression and violence, to be a transformative force for us all, even those of us who have no knowledge of what they have lived and who ignore it willfully. A celebration that the world can be made into something new when it threatens our very lives. The new year, a turning of the year. Tres Reis and Epiphany, the celebration of people of power bringing their gifts to build a community for everyone. Each of these stories, wherever we find ourselves in relationship to them, whether we connect with any of them or all of them or none, they offer us a path, a passage. Every one of them a story of real grief and suffering, not of commercialism, not of buying and selling, not of cheap veneers, not of artificial light, but of a deep and brilliant light that shines through the darkness to guide our path to something new. That is what these winter holidays offer us. And that is the work that we will do with each other this month to feel the true weight of this year, all that has been lost, and we have lost much. And by facing that reality, to find the paradox, the fuller reality, that when we walk into the darkness, we find a light to guide our way. Teddy Bear Sunday is now a beautiful tradition of our church. It has moved far beyond me and that first celebration. This year, the worship team and the RE team began planning it before I ever spoke a word. It's beautiful. It's cute. It's sweet and sincere. And we have to remind ourselves not to miss the reality that it addresses, so that we don't miss the light and the joy that it offers. Louise Owens Hatchell was orphaned and in her childhood given the responsibility to help rear her brothers and sisters, her siblings. She grew up on the farm of her grandparents during the Depression. When she married the love of her life, 2 weeks after their wedding, he went to fight in World War II. He served for 5 years, and during that time, she never received a letter from him because he didn't know how to read or write. This is a woman who knew hardship and grief her whole life. And late in her adulthood, with an offhand comment, she shared with her family that throughout her childhood of loss and grief and hardship, she never had a teddy bear. And from that darkness, her family brought light, a gift of a bear every year thereafter, just to express love and abundance to a woman who had given so much, although she had had so little. And now this tradition expands. Our congregation invited to join in it. And let us see the darkness that we are invited to step into. These bears will be given to children who have suffered abuse, whose lives in their home situations have been so violent that they must be removed. We have seen the tragedy of child removal in our country. This is removing children not for political purposes and not for the sake of enacting injustice, but for the sake of trying to help, to try to bring healing to a family and the possibility of life for a child. And in that brokenness, in that crisis, in that terrible situation where the best solution is to remove the child, a terrible solution in a terrible circumstance, to offer that child a light, hope, a little bear that they can hold as they travel through the night, through darkness. We hope to a better life. Louise Owens Hatchell is a white woman in South Carolina in the middle part of the 20th century. She knew darkness. And when she faced that darkness, she created a path, a light that has expanded to serve this congregation and children in this community who were not even born before her own life was over. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a black man in the South in the middle part of the 20th century. He and Miss Hatchell never knew each other. He also knew darkness, great darkness of oppression and injustice. And the light that he found by facing that continues to serve us and to expand our service to this community. People who he never knew. And yet his light illuminates our path. when we face the darkness, when we stand in the weight of this lost year and feel the bite of the bitter cold. We feel the sadness. We feel the grief. We feel the pain. And as Dr. King and Mrs. Hatchell and each of these bears and each of these children and each of us, as they each show us constellations, every one of them, in the darkness of this year, there is a light to guide our path. Let us find it together.
Let Christmas come, its story told, when days are short and winds are cold. Let Christmas come, its lovely song, when days are short and night is long. Let Christmas come, its great star glow, on quiet city parks of snow. Let Christmas come, its table gleam, love born again, the truth of dream.
This is the conclusion of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s final Christmas sermon, preached at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, on December 25, 1967. King was assassinated 4 months later in Memphis. In 1963, on a sweltering August afternoon, we stood in Washington, D.C., and talked to the nation about many things. Toward the end of that afternoon, I tried to talk to the nation about a dream that I had had, and I must confess to you today that not long after talking about that dream, I started seeing it turn into a nightmare. I remember the first time I saw that dream turn into a nightmare just a few weeks after I had talked about it. It was when 4 beautiful, unoffending, innocent Negro girls were murdered in a church in Birmingham, Alabama. I watched that dream turn into a nightmare as I moved through the ghettos of the nation and saw my black brothers and sisters perishing on the lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. And I saw the nation doing nothing to grapple with the Negro's problem of poverty. I saw that dream turn into a nightmare as I watched the war in Vietnam escalating, and as I saw so-called military advisors, 16,000 strong, turn into fighting soldiers until today over 500,000 American boys are fighting on Asian soil. Yes, I am personally the victim of deferred dreams, of blasted hopes, but in spite of that, I close today by saying I still have a dream, because you know you can't give up in life. If you lose hope, somehow you lose that vitality that keeps life moving. You lose that courage to be, that quality that helps you to go on in spite of all. And so today, I still have a dream.
this winter, in this lost year, walk into the darkness, guided by stars.
We have spent